All right, guys, thank you very much for coming today. We are going to operate as a subcommittee until Board Member Hudson arrives. So real quick, I'm going to go over the agenda. Looks like we are going to wait to call the order and our minutes. We'll be starting our monthly financial report and then maybe a few comments from our treasurer and Mr. Gooding. If they need to have a few comments, that will be fine. And when everyone gets here, we'll pause, do a quorum, and do the minutes. And that's pretty much about it. It's a very light meeting. I appreciate everyone's flexibility. Real quick, I know that we've been sort of operating on a shoestring committee. I apologize about that. As chairman and getting into this, I should have paid more attention to that. The only good thing about it is it sort of reminds us of sort of the obstacles in the future that you're going to have to think about. Maybe we could put some expiration dates for the committee members online, just as sort of a reminder, mostly for the board. But I'd like to get through this fiscal year where we're at right now, and then in June and July start getting those folks acclimated here, knowing what's going on. I would, since you're the only, you and Eric are here right now, please send us your recommendations. We have a couple people online. We've been getting some folks in. Send myself and Stan some folks that you're thinking about, and we'll start to collect that, and then we'll be able to start the next part of this process and getting the set. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Stan to start, or Treasurer Bohoric to start the financial report.
Stan works.
All right, Treasurer Bohoric, sorry about that.
That's it. No problem here. Well, good afternoon, late afternoon. This is the financial report for the month ending April. What's it? April got 30 days, 30th. You have a black and white printout of this presentation, which is substantially what I will report to the board next Tuesday. Again, revenues this month, year to date, continue over plan. Expenditures just ever so slightly under plan. On $418 million in plan, we're running 34. Wrong sheet, my bad. On $764 million planned revenue, we're running about $30 million ahead, or about 4%. As you know, the vast majority of that is due to the collection of the new levy. On the expenditure side, we're essentially on target. I mean, $4 million under plan on $697 million is under 1% variance, so we're right on target. And that includes the variances, as you'll see, in personnel because of that 27th pay that wasn't in the plan, and non-personnel is working, and other operating expenses are working to offset that. So we're right on target to end with a little bit higher cash balance than what we had originally forecast in the October 5-year forecast. We did factor that in, these changes, these projected changes, into the May update. Property taxes, you can see again, $35 million over plan, again due to the levy. The state's coming in right on target, slightly above plan, about 1.2%. 3.65 million on 313 in the plan. Other operating, although the percentage is large, the dollar amount is small. And the non-operating are those transfers and advances that we've discussed before that are coming in under plan. That's the one area where perhaps when we roll to the October forecast, we put in $20 million at the revenue area, and then on non-operating expenses, we put in $20 million. And I'm thinking maybe we should just back that down to 10 and 10. Won't have any impact on cash balances, but you won't have these distorted variances coming along. Because now our history is pretty much telling us that while we needed that amount for advances or transfers in the past, it certainly isn't needed right now. So that I don't want to go back into history, but part of it was food service got into running break even or better. That helped a lot. So that's where we are on revenues. Just graphically, you can see how close things are. In our two largest categories, property taxes and state, we are running above plan. And on a month-to-date basis, again, last year pretty much is a good indicator of this year. You can see in the months of January, February, March, that's the collection period, so you see some ups and downs there. April was pretty much on target, with actual coming in about $3 million above plan for the month. On the expenditure side, personnel continues its trek towards what I believe will be about $16 million over plan by the end of the year. But even at this, we're only running 2.8% over the plan so far. Again, non-personnel, it increased a bit this month, I think a couple of million further under plan to 11.6 million under plan. In the MD&A that I gave you, identified those top categories, and as we drill down, we learn more and more about what's in there.
Are we starting to feel like this is sort of a historic number that we've been using and sort of overshooting our amount? 'Cause I know we've looked at non-personnel, we always seem to be running under. Is that seem to be the case?
I've not done a historical analysis to see if this is a trend, but it's certainly something that we need to look at in terms of if we assume in either our forecast or our cash flow planning that we spend 100% of what's been appropriated, and we typically don't, then we may need to, at least in the cash flow month-to-month plan, maybe make some modifications to that, how we construct that. There are some other underlying assumptions relative to what's carried forward from one year to the next. We generally assume that those encumbrances are equal on both ends, so they're a wash. But when you get in a situation like this where you're way under plan, if all of that becomes an encumbrance, which is larger than at the end of this year, which is larger than we brought forward the previous year, that could have a cash flow implication for the next year. So we just have to dig into that. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, and we'll have a better idea next week, because we're now in the last month of school. We cut off transfers between line items that folks do, so we've cut that off last week. So there may be some things that we've changed behaviorally, that we plan to do something, but we've reallocated those dollars from here to this area to pay for it. And requisitions ordering, we cut that off on Wednesday. So we get through Tuesday's board meeting. It's the last chance folks have to board things using current year, fiscal year funds. Wednesday, we let them enter those requisitions, and once that's done, we'll have a real good idea of where things are so that we can kind of figure out what those changes were.
On community schools, right on target. And I mentioned this in the MD&A for this month. As I dug down into it a little bit deeper and looked at what's actually being charged to these two particular object codes, what I previously thought was purely the community schools and the vouchers and the Peterson and autism scholarships. There's actually some other items being charged in there off of our foundation statement. And not about $500,000 this year so far. So it convoluted that a little bit. So with the combination of the $500,000 being charged in there that I wasn't looking at.
What is that?
$500,000. I think one of the largest items is College Credit Plus.
Okay.
The expenses related to that were charged in there.
Makes sense.
And in addition, this past month, the amount for community schools jumped several $100,000. So you add those two together, and they eat up the bulk of that 1.2 million or so that I thought it would end up under plan. I think we'll be right on plan. We'll watch. We may be slightly over plan, but again, we can handle that through.
The per pupil amount looked like it increased as well, so that will affect us next year.
Yeah,
If
that's
it
the
holds.
tough one to predict. This year, when we planned out for community schools vouchers and scholarships, we did an in aggregate trend.
Yeah.
And then, now I just went back for the notes to the 5-year forecast to say, okay, what if we look at per pupil and the numbers of pupils and worked it back. So given the totals look like this, what would it take these two pieces to do? And all of them imply increasing numbers of students leaving and increased average cost per student. For instance, I think it's the scholarship, John Peterson scholarship. I think that's the one that's like $25,000 or whatever the school charges. So you can't just do numbers of students times 25,000. Our average is much lower than that, but is climbing. So it's not necessarily, we just assume that average will continue to go up. Because if the other schools' tuitions go up, that average should drive ours. But there is a ceiling of 25,000 per child, but that's not what's in our budget, okay? So that line item should be right on target, and then non-operating, as I mentioned, is running under.
It's towards the end of the year, real quick. Non-operating being $5 million under. What causes that?
That's mainly in that transfers and advances area.
That's good.
graphical representation, you can see that everything's pretty close on plan. I mean, we were only, in the aggregate, less than 1% off, so it's kind of like, we might not be exactly in the right pew, but overall at the church, we're okay, you know what I mean? Monthly, it follows very closely, so using last year as history is pretty good. You know, you might contemplate that we should drill down further. I'm not there yet. I'm not sure the catch is worth the chase. But if you do see large variances, then if you haven't drilled down to it at the beginning, it's hard to go back and ask questions. But all in all, I think this has done a pretty good job for us. And the summary and closing is revenues are over plan, expenditures under plan. That's what we like to hear typically, especially when you're in the middle of the next to last month of the fiscal year. So no surprises. If Board Member Gibbs is listening, there are no surprises.
She's not.
Okay. So that concludes the monthly financial report. If anybody has any further questions, let me know.
Any questions from the committee? Members? Well, seeing that, this will now flow up to the board. I appreciate the presentation. I guess that's pretty much the agenda, but Stan, or Treasurer Bork, you did want to comment on a few other things?
Yeah, just a segue a little bit, you know, we mentioned when we did the 5-year forecast that there were a lot of variables, and not soon after you folks picked options 2 and 3 that we took to the board last week as the first presentation, you know, the Senate comes out and there's talk about 0% change in the cap. So it's just another day in paradise of trying to figure out what we do. And we really have to wait before we do anything in our planning till we get that state budget number. And we have contingency plans. You know, we've looked at that 30 FTE, identified potential non-personnel changes to make to offset those, to bring them back into 18. There are some other personnel items that are on the table for consideration, but I think all of that cannot be finalized necessarily until we get that state budget number. State budget number in our simulations, as you go from 5% down, it's simple enough to say that that's not good, but the numbers grow on a compounded basis because of our assumption that if we assume 5% in the first 2 years of the biennium, it will hold true for the next 2. Well, when those 4 or 5% increases become 3% increases, it's pretty significant. So,
All right, well, now that we have a quorum, I'm going to ask the treasurer to call the roll.
Sorry.
You're all right, it's okay.
it's 4:23.
Oh.
You didn't miss much in the monthly financial
Mr.
report.
Peretti,
Here.
Mr. Brown,
Here.
Ms. Zaranen,
Yes.
Ms. Hudson,
Here, finally.
Mr. Robinson is absent, and Mr. Stewart is absent. So you now have a quorum at 4:23.
And we also have our minutes from our April 19th meeting, if you would look
I
through
move we
those.
approve the minutes.
I second it.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Same sign for no. All right. Let's get back to our comments on the 5-year forecast. We were just discussing that the
Okay.
Senate is having some discussion about possibly moving the cap down to 0, which would be awful.
And I had said that we've run simulations of different, even more revenue scenarios than what the committee saw,
Yeah.
just to see the impact. And I was explaining that as you move from 5% to 0%, or whatever, those are, I've got a simulation for every percent in that range. Obviously, the picture gets worse, but it's compounded because we assume if we get 5 in the first 2 years, we get 5 in the third and fourth year. So 4 5s, when it becomes 4 3s, it's compounded. It just gets large very quickly. And then we've done some work on the non-personnel side, and you can have Mr. Gooding speak to that if you like, but you know, comments last, one of our assumptions the expenditure assumption assumed the movement of that 30 FTE. So we were looking at, if we bring them back to 18, identifying non-personnel that will cover it or more than cover it. And it's just an example, this is an ongoing process for us. We didn't stop after the last FAC in terms of considering, alternative budget scenarios that we might have to enact. And the big driver, though, for us is the state budget. The picture at 3% is dramatically different than 5%, and the picture at 0 is untenable. So I just.
How many operating mills would we need to make up that difference?
I have that, but I don't have that with me.
I mean, if we had to go to the community and say, to keep doing this,
It's extraordinary, I will tell you that, because we only simulated down to 3%. We didn't even go all the way to 0. With the bridge.
Not today, since we all met this morning at 10, I went back and added some, and it's.
I think it would probably be helpful to put that in perspective for stakeholders, what it would mean, because I would assume they're probably trying to fill holes for folks in suburban districts and that sort of, some.
Interesting.
And they're probably assuming they won't get the $60 million back from their judgment or anything, so. Wow. Yeah.
I was.
If we were to actually issue something that talked about that much money, say somebody's in the Senate talking about 0, here's what that would mean in mills. Here's what that would mean in dollars on a $100,000 home.
Well, because that means that's the state cutting that and pushing it down to the.
Yeah,
Push that down folks.
yeah.
I can do that in my simulator, I just don't have it.
That's fine.
Have it here. You'll get a look at that at a later board meeting,
Okay.
for sure.
It's,
Yeah.
it's easily double digits,
Mhm.
if not in the 20 range. It's big.
Yeah, but the public doesn't have a clue of what it would represent for schools.
So that.
Oh, what else did I miss?
In all black.
Board member Hudson, he shared before you came in, I don't know if you said it again once she got here, but you'd asked us to take a look at making reductions in non-personnel so that we could go ahead and not delay the 30 FTE.
Yeah.
We did do that.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I'm really sorry.
Scott, would you like to maybe discuss that a little further if you're prepared?
Yeah, we can talk about that. We pulled all of the chiefs together, went through all the budget requests, and really broke down. We went through everything, line by line, to see what was there. There were some things that we.
Again.
Again.
Yes.
After everything was vetted internally and here through the committee, we went back and looked at some things and looking at different funding sources. So, for example, the AEDs, the electronic defibrillators, that we looked at those and moved those from our nursing program. So it's not that we're losing the AEDs, which I believe were originally purchased in 2005. So they need to be updated, but we're going to move those over into some of our capital funds to still do those. The investment in WCBE, for example, the $1 million that we put it on the table. It's an investment that we need to make at some point, but we're holding that back because we're not going to do that now. So the things we had out there that we looked at, we pulled out just under $6.7 million in funding for next year for some of these items. None which will have a direct impact, and it obviously went in depth in conversation looking at variances, for example. So we looked at utility costs, we looked at bus fuel, that there's things that we're running under and we think we're going to continue to run under. So we've modified what those future requests are. We've lowered those amounts, so we don't think we're going to lose anything. We're going to tighten those up a little bit, and that allows us to reduce that request.
That's in part what you mentioned, right? Is this a trend,
Mhm.
and are we doing it in
Mhm.
pieces and parts, yeah?
Good, right. Well, also, just real quick, we did have a really great presentation, Board Member Hudson and I, and Treasurer Borg and Mr. Gooding, about our facilities operating budget, looking at what it costs for our buildings, different deltas and dynamics that, you want to explore. One building to another is not going to be necessarily the same for a lot of different reasons, but it is coming along really, really nicely, and I just want to say thank you to your teams putting that together. I look forward to an update of that at some point in the future, and when we would be able to have some sort of, when we could maybe expect it. Doesn't need to be rushed, but I would like to possibly see something soon. That's a good answer. Well, is there anything else?
Get everybody out the door first, is that, is that the
It would be nice.
possible issue? Yeah. Which is the top priority, so get everybody out across the stage and out further onto the summer.
July, did you and I talk about the July meeting? The desire to have or not to have?
There's a historical precedent that the board doesn't do anything in July. I am not opposed to having finance in July, but it also has to work with people's schedules that plan things ahead of time. Could also have vacations, and I wouldn't want to do that to anybody. But we should discuss it as this facilities operating budget sort of comes together, and sort of what need we think as a committee, how this will serve us not only for our annual budgeting processes, but also how it'll fit into eventually us reconvening the facilities committee and how it can be a tool for that. And I know that's a long-term process, what I would like to see as a board member. I don't want to be backed up to a timeline of 6-7 months. I'd rather us have a good conversation. Again, yeah. So I would,
It could get accelerated if they keep that cap at zero.
yeah, really. But, I think that's something that, we can discuss, here over the next month, how everything comes together with that facility piece. Because it's my understanding that next month is June. We will be doing our monthly financial and the appropriations resolution,
Yes,
and that's pretty much it.
yes.
Appropriations
Right.
resolution is pretty standard. Okay. So I think, let's just think about, where we're at in this process. The committee also wants to see, is it feasible, is it possible? Again, I'd rather, see a good product than something rushed. And then how does that mesh up with July with everyone? And if it does not work, then we could look into early August for maybe to kick off, hopefully.
Would that be the 13th of July,
I do not know.
which is the second Thursday of July,
That would be the typical
the typical?
time.
Mhm.
It's
You're on vacation.
the second Thursday after the first Tuesday.
Well, I mean, a lot of people plan vacations ahead of time, usually several months ahead of time.
Mhm.
So let's just, take all this in. Let's talk about it over the next few weeks. If it's, I don't see much of a difference between July 13th and an early meeting in August. So,
I think,
Go ahead,
Trevor,
Nick.
I think it's well advised, so a lot of our senior level staff really can't take extended vacations during the school year.
absolutely.
And because of the appropriations measure being on the 30th of June, we're all kind of locked into
Yeah.
forfeiting that month. So you
Yeah.
will see, we go into skeletal operating
Absolutely.
the first 2 to 3 weeks of July. I think people try to take advantage of that July 4th extended holiday then. And I think it's important for them to refresh. And
I
I
agree.
would concur with you. It's either late July or early August before you're going to have a more quality product.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to hit them as soon as they walk back in the door.
Why don't we, I would just say, maybe we, right now, I don't have it on the I prefer we take, I'm fine to have meet, so if you would need us, I think, call us. And maybe we could use this time too, we need to fill in a couple.
Yeah, and that's
committee
what we
members,
discussed
so-
that first, the first thing, and I'd like to use the month of June and July not only to collect information from folks and potential members, and then use that month internally amongst, us and our staff that we could do by email, I think, and discuss what the best course of action and the best fit for this committee, and hopefully by August and September, we can start getting these new committee folks here, and it would be my preference maybe for them to have some, small meetings outside the committee that they can get up to speed with Mr. Gooding and Mr. Bohoric, sort of what we've been doing, what it looks like, answer any questions so we can hit the ground running in the committee.
Yeah, there's nothing on the calendar relative to a July meeting. I think we typically take July
We take
off.
July off. Let's just assume that then, and look
Okay.
into early August.
Okay.
And we'll use July for us to gather information for our committee members, which is a priority.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes,
Rather
Yeah.
for Mr. Stan. I clicked, what is the vendor, I'm sorry, on the transparency link, so we have the state checkbook, and then what is our?
Tyler?
Tyler. So yeah, I tried to go through to the Tyler one, and it asked me for a login. So I don't.
Really?
Yeah, so that's where I wondered, it's like,
That's trying to do that we had someone else do that. Inside, we can't get them to reduplicate that, so we're having issues trying
I
to.
can do a screenshot and.
Yeah, we had,
Okay.
yeah, I'll work on that.
Okay, 'cause, yeah,
Yeah.
if
okay.
it's supposed to
I mean, if you
be
click through
public-
that, if
Maybe
you
you have
click
to make
through
a
it-
special mission to McDonald's and use their Wi-Fi.
No, if you click through it, it should still let you in. So did you try
Just
bypassing it?
bypass the
Just
login?
bypass
Well,
it.
yeah, but we should put something up otherwise to say that the
Yeah.
instruction to do that.
I mean, until then, I mean, it shouldn't. Are you using Chrome?
yes.
Okay. Okay. All right, I'll look into it.
Well, thank you. Because, yeah, I was excited. It's like, oh, he's right in his footer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I didn't have the keyword.
Well, do we have
Well,
anything
thanks.
else?
think
I
that's
have
it.
nothing.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, same sign?
You can
We're
stay
adjourned.
here if you want.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks for an efficient meeting.